Hey everybody, welcome back to DDJ's Inferno, the mostly weekly show where we discuss issues relevant to men and how to survive in our gynocentric society. And this week's guest we have is Blue Shogun, and we're going to be discussing homelessness. Welcome, Blue Shogun. Go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Hello there, Blue Shogun, also known as Arrow Shogun, and hashtag Sony Crockett, no, Sony and the Nukes. No, just like the song. Sony and the Nukes. Uh, uh,
And apparently the coffee has just kicked in.
Yeah,
So
I'm feeling energetic now.
there you go. So with everything that's been going on with all of the censorship and the mass deplatforming purge that was started by big tech and is now moving to other elements of the online sphere, like billing providers and things like that, and payment processors. Everybody's been looking for alternatives to YouTube. They're looking for alternatives to live stream. They're looking for alternatives for payment processors. And then those people that they can't silence are being attacked. So I kind of wanted to touch base on that just a little bit before we get started. Assuming that I'm not roboting too bad, because I noticed that Discord has been popping in and out as far as voice is concerned. So if I start to robot, I apologize in advance. It's Discord taking a shit. So eventually I'm going to be moving away from Discord to not only for the patrons, but I'm also going to be moving away from Discord to run the show, because their new update has fucked a lot of things up and a lot of people are frustrated by it. And I'm probably going to either be switching to Skype full time, or I'm going to be switching to what's called Riot.im. Now, Riot.im is an open source alternative that you can actually host your own voice server. It does everything that Discord does, minus the social justice bullshit built in on top of it. So I wanted everybody to kind of know that that's kind of where I'm headed, because I anticipate Discord going out of its way to shut down people who are live streaming and saying things that the far left doesn't like. So with that said, I mean, I'm already seeing some voice connection issues on my particular Discord as I'm speaking. Fortunately, I'm also recording this as well, so I'm not going to have to worry about relying on just Discord by itself. And so as I do post-production and post-processing, it'll be easier for everybody to understand. So if there's anything else that, like if you don't understand a portion of the stream and it's a Discord issue, there's a good chance that when you watch the show, once it's been post-processed and once post-production is done, you'll be able to understand everything that everybody is saying. So with this show here, the program, I'm looking in the chat, the program, Smart Pervert BG4, is called Riot.im. And I'm going to type it in the chat for people to look at. I suggest you check it out. It runs on iOS, it runs on Android, it runs on Linux, it runs on Windows, and it runs on Mac OS X. And it has cross-platform support. Not only do the Riot.im team run their own server, but you can actually run your own server. So back in the day, I've been on the internet for a long time. Back in the day, before centralized servers came to be a thing, we used to run our own servers for gaming. So we would run a TeamSpeak server. You'd run it just basically off your home computer. So as far as that's concerned, that's pretty much what Riot allows you to do. So rather than running like a centralized server through Discord or a centralized server through, whatever, like Skype, for example, what you're going to see is with Riot.im, you can run your own server and you can host it yourself, and it does voice, it does video, it does audio, it does texting. And on top of that, it does file transfer, and it has an interface that is somewhat similar to what Discord uses. But the best thing about it is it's completely open source. It's completely free. It doesn't do what Discord does, where Discord will go onto your computer and search your hard drive for games. In other words, Discord is right now, with this current patch, it's reading your hard drive. It's using your data and it's using your bandwidth. And that's a problem. And it does this on your phone. It does this on your computer. And that's why when you see these voice connection blackouts that's happening, it's because Discord has to share the bandwidth between its reading and spying on your hard drive and whatever it is you're actually attempting to doing. Basically, it's clogging up your network connections. And that's a shit show, and that shouldn't happen. I completely disagree with it, both on a ethical level and on a philosophical level. So with that said, riot.im is the direction I'm going to head now. I put a link to it in the chat. Actually, if you just type in riot.im, that'll actually take you to the website. So check it out, take a look at it, play with it. I really think that it's going to be the way forward, as long because I don't see the purge stopping. I see people continuously, moving forward. I actually don't want to host a TeamSpeak server currently, because the problem with TeamSpeak is that even though you host a big server, you need a lot of bandwidth for it, and a lot of third-party hosting companies are an issue. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about too a little bit beforehand is, moving away from a lot of the big tech, software and a lot of the big tech services. I might want to consider that if I were you guys, just consider using different alternatives, because I think that there's a way around it. Now, as far as live streaming is concerned, I'm not that impressed with DTube, which is Steemit's blockchain video service. However, DTube just came out a month ago. They just rolled out a live streaming service that you can actually stream gaming on. So for live streaming, I think D Live is what they're calling it. I think D Live is the way forward. I still believe in Bitchute. Real.video is coming out. And, as an alternative to YouTube, I might want to check that out a little bit. There's a big push and there's a lot of money behind Real.video. Unfortunately, though, I really respect Ray, who runs Bitchute, and I know he's got a very small team. I think it's like him or just a couple other people. And I think that, supporting Bitchute is the way to go, because Bitchute uses torrent protocol. And so it's more self-sustaining in a lot of ways rather than a lot of these other services. So when it comes to, decentralization, when it comes to peer-to-peer type of situation, Bitchute, I think, is the way to go. There may be other alternatives I haven't heard of. I know there's another program out there called Zenifer, but Zenifer wants everybody to have they want you to have multiple YouTube content creators get together and then form your own station. In other words, form your own cluster of programming so that you can be doing that all the time. But I just wanted you guys to be aware of that. So if you have not, the other side of this is too, if for some reason I get deplatformed off of Twitch, or if I get deplatformed off of YouTube, the way that you're going to be able to find me is going to be on these alternative platforms. You're going to find me on minds.com. You're going to find me on gab.ai, and you're going to find me on bitchute.com. If you have not subscribed to those channels, I suggest you do so if you want my content. Now, the other piece of it is too, if you turn on notifications on Bitchute, once I drop videos and Bitchute backs them up, you're going to get a notification for every one of those videos. And if you've seen my most recent video about the adpocalypse being a lie, you're going to realize that YouTube is not notifying everybody of your videos. They're not notifying you, your subscribers when you upload a video. They're not notifying you when you go live on YouTube. And then on top of that, they're auto unsubscribing people. This is an issue, and it's been an issue for a long time. I mean, this isn't something that's new, and I'm far from the first person to talk about this. But it's still an issue, and I still think it's a problem. And I think that it's one of those scenarios where it has to be addressed. And the only way to address it is for bigger content creators to move. But even so, thankfully, YouTube is not my primary source of income. I mean, I am an author, and, I have other streams of income coming in. So for me, switching over to D Live for live streaming, switching over to Bitchute for my content isn't as much of a problem for me. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't appreciate, your Patreon. It also doesn't mean that I'm not going to shill, like Twitch Prime for you guys to support me here, or any other options that you want to do, or the guys that have been kind enough to wire me tokens through minds.com. But at the same token, I'm just saying that I don't need it. So because I don't need it, it provides me a little bit of opportunity to really diversify if I have to. So with that said, I did notice in the chat somebody asked a question if I saw Deanne Lorraine's latest video. No, I don't actually get a chance to watch a lot of YouTube content. I am ridiculously busy. I know it doesn't seem like that, but I mean, I have a life outside of YouTube, and I'm doing lots of stuff. So I think that when it comes to content creators, I mean, obviously, I see the link in the chat. If somebody wants to shoot that link to me via Minds, or they want to shoot that link to me via gabby.ai, I'll see it and go from there. If you want to get a hold of me, again, and you want to be on the live stream, you have something that you think you can talk about for 45 minutes to an hour, shoot me a message via missandrytoday.com, which is my website, or shoot me a direct message on Minds or a direct message on gab.ai. These are the easiest ways to get a hold of me. Or, of course, you can email me at Gmail, but I'm not sure how long I'm going to keep my Gmail account. Again, because I'm trying to de-Googlify some of what I'm doing. So with that said, welcome, Blue Shogun. Thank you guys for entertaining my rant a little bit. I see apparently Lone Wolf thinks that I'm ranting. He can go fuck himself, but that's okay. So
after the show.
There you go. After the show. Exactly. Yeah. Fuck yourself after the show. But with that said, Blue Shogun, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about homelessness, so take it away.
Okay. So anyway, also I wanted to mention this. Now, I've been red pill 10 years now. This year marks my 10-year anniversary of taking the red pill and essentially going my own way. Now, during that time, I've seen a lot of things. Including a lot of things that men go through when they're homeless. Now, there are certain statistics that we already know regarding homeless, especially knowing that men are the majority of the homeless, and they experience most of the violent assaults, even in the streets. Of course, that at the time I was living in the Pacific Northwest. I neither confirm nor deny where or whether I'm still there either. And I won't say exactly where I was because if there's anybody listening that's in that area that needs help from this particular place I was in, I don't want to discourage them from going there because you will get help. It doesn't matter whether you're man, woman, black, or white, you will get help from them. You just have to remember that there's going to be two strikes against you in one way or another. So anyway, so starting with how I became homeless. Now, I used to work in tech. At least at the time I did. And I had gotten laid off from my job. Now, I could not find another one. And it was even hell trying to find a regular job at the time. So yeah, this was in 2010. So I had to go through the hell of being homeless. So fortunately, I only had to sleep outside one time, which was good. Sure. That is correct. I was able to get unemployment because even though I had worked at that particular company for a certain amount of time, I also had wages from my previous job from when I lived out of that state. So those wages combined, I was able to get unemployment, but it was not enough for me. Okay, but it was not enough for me to actually take care of, actually have an apartment or even do much with it. So yeah, but it is what helped save me, but which I will get to in a moment.
Okay, so I guess my question is this. So, and I apologize, I'd accidentally muted myself on the stream. So for those people that didn't hear me, I asked if he had unemployment insurance, and that was his answer. But my question is this. I mean, obviously, the Pacific Northwest is very, very expensive to live, especially in the Puget Sound region. So obviously, I mean, even with unemployment from a prior employer, I mean, you couldn't afford to pay the rent at all. Again, because everything is so fucking expensive. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear for people that understood that, it wasn't like you were just sitting around with your thumb up your ass. You were looking for work and couldn't find it.
Yeah, exactly. And around that time, that's when things started to go up because when I came back to the Pacific Northwest, won't say exactly what year it was. Now, things were still relatively cheap, but even with what I was getting in unemployment, still wasn't enough to actually get an apartment and so on. I mean, plus my credit was not looking good since the people I was actually staying with, there was an issue with one person not paying her rent. Yes, it was a woman, and yes, the rest of us men were responsible.
Color me surprised.
Yeah. So yes, we all got evicted, and we all had judgments against us.
Let me step in here for a second. Just so you
Okay.
guys know, I don't know how it works in every other state, but I do know how it works in the state of Washington. If you have an eviction against you, even if it's just a court filed eviction where there's no finding of conviction, apartment complexes will not rent to you. And the ones that will rent to you are usually dumps. They're in bad neighborhoods and they require massive amounts of extra monies for deposits and things like that. So it's usually like a deposit equivalent of a month's rent plus last month's rent plus first month's rent plus whatever fees they decide to assess you. I've lived in the Northwest for a long time and I've done some landlord tenant law. So I'm personally aware of a lot of exactly what Blue Shogun is talking about. And I kind of want to paint a picture for people to understand exactly how difficult it is to find housing in the Pacific Northwest. Most of your landlords are going to require 3 times the amount of rent in order just to move in and gross income. And a lot of other, I think they're kind of unconscionable clauses, but the rents out there are ridiculously expensive. So it's like even in like a slum, like if you look at an area like Everett, which is north of Seattle, like the average 1-bedroom apartment, I think is running around $1,000 to $1,100 for just a 1-bedroom apartment. Now that's not including utilities. That's not including deposit. That's not including anything other than just the bare rent. And that's not even at a high-end apartment. Some other apartments, it's even more expensive than that. So just kind of be aware that, you know, shit is expensive in the Northwest. A lot of people talk about San Francisco. They talk about Los Angeles. They talk about, you know, some of these other areas like New York City. Seattle is extremely, extremely expensive. So, and I say Seattle, I'm talking about the entire Puget Sound region. Go on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, DJ.
Oh, I was going to say, you know, it wasn't always that way, but it's that way now, and it's getting progressively worse. So, with that said, thank you for letting me interject, Blue Shogun. Go on.
Okay. Yeah, that was a very good. Those were some very good details to add because, yeah, like you said, I wasn't a bum. I wasn't someone who was just looking for the easy way out. It was legitimately difficult for me to actually find. For me to actually find a place to live. I mean, even after this whole ordeal, which I'll get to in a moment, towards the end of the show, likely. So anyway, so I ended up applying to live at this transitional housing place because I'm getting ready to lose my home, getting kicked out, and I need a place to live. I don't want to be living under a bridge. Nobody really wants that. Well, I mean, there's some that do, but they a lot of times there's homeless people that just simply give up. But that's beyond the scope of what I'm getting at here. So yeah, so going from there, I applied and I was accepted, but there was a waiting list because, and the waiting list for men and women is different because, well, for one, there's less homeless women out there, at least in the Pacific Northwest. For men, there's going to be more, so the waiting list is going to be longer. You know, typically when you move in, you have because it was actually this place that was converted into transitional housing building. So I won't say much more than that. But when I
how long was the wait list? In other words, how long did you have to wait from the time that you applied to the time that you were accepted into the transitional housing?
Okay, I had to wait 2 months.
Okay, and in that 2-month period, it sounded like you were in the process of getting evicted. Of that, I'm assuming that there was a period of time where you were either couch surfing or something like that, or what was going on there.
Yeah, I did some couch surfing in between that time. Like I mentioned before, fortunately, I only had to sleep outside one time.
Okay, and of like in totality, how long were you homeless?
Okay, in totality,
altogether.
I was homeless for about a little over 2 years.
Okay, and that was it. And that was in multiple times.
I'm sorry. You cut out for a second.
So that wasn't a 2-year stretch. That was like multiple times up to 2 years.
No, that was actually counting being in transitional housing as well.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about transitional housing because I'm not quite understanding it. And if I don't understand it, I don't think my audience does either. So talk
Okay,
to me about, so you get accepted in transitional housing, and talk to me about that.
okay, so transitional housing is essentially housing for the homeless. So this place was funded by the Catholic Church, of course, and essentially what they do is they, at least the place that I was in, you have a place to stay. You actually have an address that you can use. You even have yourself a mailbox, which is good. Uh, um, but when you, but the main thing is, of course, you're still governed by the people that are employed by the Catholic Church. But you're not exactly but you don't have like priests roaming around like holding up a cross and say calling you a sinner and say you're going to go to hell if you're doing this and that and this and that. No, it wasn't like that, and you weren't forced to go to church either for those who are militantly atheist. So you don't have to worry about that. So okay, I kind of lost my train of thought here.
So my
But
point is,
anyway,
okay, so you were in transitional housing. How long did you stay in transitional housing?
okay, I stayed there 2 years.
Okay. And the transitional housing, so they gave you an address. They basically made sure that I mean, did you have your own private room? How'd they help you there?
Okay, so initially I had a roommate who I stayed with for a certain amount of time. Well, actually, had two roommates. Well, they were not at the same time. Well, eventually one had gotten his own room because what they have is what they call a compliance system. So you have to have some sort of income. And you know what? I mean, because there's something I need to mention before I get too deep into this, because it's also a very important thing to mention as to why I've actually came onto the show. So to be in compliance, of course, you have to have some sort of income, and because what they do is they make you pay $10 a rent per month, or was it a week? I don't remember. And yeah, it was a week. Now I remember. And you had to save a certain amount of money a week. You had to save that money in a savings account. You had to continuously put that money in a savings account to show them that you are serious about saving your money and getting yourself a place to live. Because the whole goal of this place is to end homelessness for the people that are genuinely trying to get off of the streets. So if you are in compliance, showing that you have kept up, well, you have kept up with the rules, such as paying your rent,
Sure.
and putting the money in your savings account, and actually printing out showing a bank statement showing that you've actually been doing that. Then you qualify for a room by yourself. But if you
Okay.
don't, then you're going to miss out on that. So yeah, I did eventually get my own room, which was good. But I wanted to kind of rewind a bit because I kind of forgot to mention this. So there is a screening process for people to get in.
Okay.
Now, there's two parts of it. First one is when you go and apply. You have to fill out this application. You write out your details, your name, and stuff like that. And you also have to fill out this sheet regarding criminal history, because they have an agreement with who they can't take. It's like if you're like a known pedophile or sex offender, or if you've been convicted of a very heinous crime such as a serial murderer, then that's not someone that they can take. But if you had something like indecent exposure, you had some sort of misdemeanor or a minor felony, then they are willing to give you a chance.
So what you're saying is that what you're saying is that your indecent exposure conviction got you in?
No. No.
I'm just being a smartass.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, we're kind of digging into the nitty gritty here. I guess my focus is this. So you had a 2-month waiting list. And obviously, you know, because you were in transitional housing, you saw a lot of male homeless people. My question for you is, when it came to transitional housing and when it came to the support, you said something about that men would go in there with 2 strikes against them. Talk about what those strikes are, and talk to me about kind of the gynocentrism that you actually saw in the transitional housing.
Okay, yeah, I'm just about to get to that because I do believe the screening process is very important to mention here, especially since when I got in, I was actually elected to help with that process because it was residents within that place that helped with the screening and helped make the decisions who they would and who they would not accept. So yes, I was on that committee for like 6 months, and then some more months after that. I actually screened several people to get in. I mean, I had to be aware of the crazies, the drug addicts, because if you're on drugs and you fail the drug test, then yeah, you're not going to get in. But I talked to a lot of men there, and I'm not saying that this is the biggest reason why they became homeless, but it was the number one thing that I heard, and that was actually consistent, besides maybe losing your job or just being down on your so-called luck. They say that a lot of men, they were homeless because they got screwed over in a divorce or in a relationship. And they can't afford to live like a normal person anymore. I've heard that many times.
Well, and it's interesting that you mentioned that. So, hashtag shill alert. In my book, I talk about male homelessness. And what's interesting is relationship breakup is one of the top reasons men go homeless. I mean, definitely divorce, rape, and getting hammered in family court. These are major reasons for men to go homeless. The reason that it's important, I mean, to talk about this issue is because when men who have been raked over the coals by the family court system, when they get homeless and they get to the point where they become homeless, they run the risk of, number one, of getting a criminal record. They run the risk of being chronically homeless, and their risk for death goes way up. And I'm not even just talking about like the violence that happens in the streets. I'm talking about like the physical ailments that happen. I mean, we've all heard of the stories of, the guy who fell asleep on the sidewalk and ended up dying in the middle of the night because he froze to death in the middle of winter. I mean, that stuff happens all the time. And those men are forgotten. And people don't understand that, those men had lives. Those men had things that they, hopes and dreams. And they ended up, through no fault of their own, getting completely financially destroyed by the family court system, by gynocentrism, and by the feminist war on men. And they literally had their lives destroyed and eventually died for it.
And you know what? I have some stories relating to that also, which I'll also get to. But I wanted to also expand on this point here. So yeah, even when, so there's 2 parts of the screening process. The initial one where you actually apply, talk to one of the staff facilitators there. Fortunately, he was a man. And he was like the only man that actually, he was the only man that actually you came in face with. Because the rest of the staff, except for one person, who was gay, they were all women. And the head of this place was a lesbian. Now I got along great with all of them. I mean, they were all good to me, and I really appreciate them. Now, I mean, I still have respect for them to this day because they helped me get a place to live, and I've been on my feet ever since. Well, most of the time. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought again.
Well, I guess what I'm saying. Here's the thing. Let's try to narrow the focus down a little bit. So you came you came into contact with a lot of men. And it, obviously a lot of men said that they became homeless as a result of family court. So one of the things I remember when we talked about homelessness before the show, one of the things that you had said to me is that a lot of times people are saying, don't give money to the homeless, give it to the organizations instead. Talk to me a little bit about that, and talk to me about your views on that.
Okay, so when it comes to the homeless themselves, yeah, being a formerly homeless person, there's a saying called game recognizes game. That that there are some people that are essentially just trying to, just make a buck off of you and try to make a buck off your sympathy. And then there's the organizations that help people directly. Now, there are now as you already know, there's tons of places that help women. I mean, there's the YWCA, and then there's all sorts of things that are just in favor of.
Well, they focus on women only, sure.
But I can only think of one place in the Pacific Northwest that focuses on men.
Well, yeah, I think it's called the Millionaires Club.
Well, Millionaire Club is actually something a little different. That's actually for people that want to. I mean, people like homeless people that actually want to work. They get called for a job. They do that job and they get paid cash.
Right.
That's what that is. I actually looked into that. Thing is, there was, well, in Seattle, it was short for the Mission. The Bread of Life.
Yeah. I'm familiar with that.
That's it.
I remember driving by it.
Yeah. So yeah, when you get to these organizations, I mean, it seems like it's mostly going to go to women anyway, even though women are the least likely to be homeless anyway. There's this woman that is in that particular region who I've seen multiple times, who will just put on this really pitiful, sad face and will hold a cup in your face and will just trying to beckon you to just put change in there. I mean, I don't do it because I've seen that person several times, and you can just tell it's a game. It's all for show. Right. So yeah, it's kind of hard to discern.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. I mean, obviously you've experienced a lot of other people with homelessness. Other than transitional housing, how did you get out of this trap of homelessness to get back on your feet? Talk to me about some of the things that you had to do to get away from being homeless and to become more self-sufficient.
Okay, so essentially, I had to do things. I mean, while I was in transitional housing, I had to essentially, because I'm under a microscope, especially as a man. Now, because I used to get in trouble for things that I didn't know about, and I almost got kicked out for something that I didn't know about, because there was a little detail I did not even know about, and yeah, it almost cost me housing. But I mean, I ended up getting some punitive action taken against me, but it was actually better than actually just getting kicked out. So I noticed that that when you're a woman, that you can get away with a lot more in that place. There's more rules that you can break and get away with than a man could.
Well, yeah, that's kind of centrism. But I mean, what did you have to do? I mean, we can talk about that in a minute, but what did you have to do to get out of transitional housing to get back on your feet?
Okay, so what I had to do was I had to take whatever job I could get. So I worked as a contractor for a few companies, took a few regular jobs that were irregular, like on call and whatnot.
Right.
And I didn't have a whole lot of money. Sure. And I was having a hard time making money as well. So I had to save all that money up for about 2 years. And even then, I was still having a hell of a time trying to get a regular job and trying to get stable again. So eventually they got me a subsidiary. So I was living in subsidized housing for quite some time, and that was affordable for me because at first the rent was free, but it was essentially, this was also owned by the Catholic Church, and it actually had a cathedral at the bottom, but I wasn't forced to go to church or anything like that. So yeah, that was very, very kind of them to actually give me that. But yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically you had to take any job you could, save all the money that you could, and then basically eventually you got out and got your own place. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The point, yeah. And the point I'm trying to make is this. One of the things that Blue Shogun has talked, and again, for anybody who's paying attention to, or I should say watching the stream, one of the things that Blue Shogun talked about is that he received a lot of support from this Catholic organization to help him not be homeless. And the only reason that he got that help was because he did not have a domestic violence restraining order against him. It's because he had no criminal record. It's because he had no potentially threatening history in order to get that. And even then, even when he jumped through all those particular hoops, he still almost got kicked out of his housing. Now, again, when you look at these types of scenarios and you look at this kind of thing, Blue Shogun, when it comes to the homeless men in the United States, he's the exception, he's not the rule. So even though technically he had a roof over his head, he still had like a gun to his head every moment of the day because he's living in transitional housing and there are other people that want his slot. There's a lot of competition for these slots. And I'm sure that there's people in that housing that were setting other people up to get their friends involved. So it was a dog eat dog sort of situation. Then on top of all of that, it took him 2 years to get back on his feet. Now, imagine if you are a non-custodial father who has been divorce raped and you've been falsely accused of domestic violence and you become homeless. You don't have an option for transitional housing. You're fucked. You are sleeping under the bridge. There are no resources for men out there when it comes to homelessness after they've been divorce raped. And the sad part about it is that most of these men, they don't expect to get divorce raped. I mean, I've seen guys who, they've had good careers. They've got bachelor's degrees. They're working in specialized fields. I mean, Blue Shogun works in tech. It's not like he's pumping gas at a gas station. But the thing that he said was, and I think that this is something that needs to resonate with a lot of men out there. And I don't care how much money you're making. I don't care how successful you think you are. I don't care, what kind of degree you have or how long you've been at that job. If you let one of these superpower thoughts rake you over the coals, you will lose your job. You will lose your livelihood, and you will possibly lose your home in the trade. So you need to make sure that you've got a rainy day fund so that that doesn't happen or that it's less likely to happen. And on top of that, you need to make sure that you are capable and willing to do whatever job is necessary. Now, the reason I bring this up is because I remember when I went through my first divorce, I was 22 years old and I ended up getting it was like a couple of months before I turned 23. I ended up getting custody of 2 children and I didn't know what the fuck to do. I had to find a place to live. I had to, the kids showed up with a car seat and a diaper bag each. They didn't have anything else. And I'm like, what the fuck do I do? And again, I'm basically a young man raising children. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So I had to go out and I had to start figuring out what it is to do. I had nobody to help me. So you have to understand that, you have to be willing to have the mindset that you are going to succeed no matter what. Don't do this bullshit about I try my best or, I'm going to make an effort or no. The mindset you have to get over that hump is I am going to succeed no matter what. No matter what obstacle is placed in my path, no matter what the weather looks like, no matter what the circumstances are, I am going to succeed no matter what. And you take whatever job is there.
Exactly. And that was the mindset that I had.
All right, give me a second. Our stream is going red here. Give me a second here. Okay. I'm going to see if we're going to give it a second. This OBS disconnected. It's going to reconnect.
Okay. So yeah, and by the way, there's a handful of things that I still wanted to mention. I wanted to mention before the end. Right. Sorry if I took too long to get to it.
Give it a second. Give it a second. I want to make sure that OBS comes back on.
Okay.
It even seems like Discord's getting ready to shit the bed too.
They are. So all right. So we look like we are trying to come back on. It's having really difficult times. So give me just a quick second.
Okay.
Yeah,
because there's some blatant gynocentrism that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I just want to make sure that Discord is not shit the bed and everything else is not shit the bed. Give me a second here.
All right.
Yeah, let everybody know there's technical difficulties. Okay, I think we are back live. So, but my point is that, and tell them to refresh everything because now that we're back live, everything's going on. Yeah, just have them refresh. So, but my point is that, and I kind of want to repeat some of this, and I'll try to be a little bit more brief. My point is that I think it's going to be one of those scenarios where you have to have the mindset that you're going to succeed no matter what. You're going to have the mindset that no matter what you do, you're going to get through it. And you have to be willing to take whatever job that comes along. I think that's the most important piece. So when you're willing to take the job, no matter what, whatever that job is that comes along, you need to save your money. You can't be going out to eat all the time. You have to be able to budget. You have to be able to make those sacrifices. And then, frankly, I think that even if you're making a lot of money, don't go out and buy shit just to buy it. If you're not going to use it, then don't purchase it. If you're buying something like, if maybe you have the money to buy a Mercedes. Do you really need a Mercedes? I mean, is it a status symbol, or can you get by with a less expensive vehicle? Those are the types of things I'm talking about, because I tell you, you never know when that rainy day comes, and it's always the guys who think that they can't be touched. They're the ones who get divorce raped. They're the ones who get falsely accused. And here's the thing: you could be MGTOW. You could be MGTOW, and you could avoid women as much as you can, or avoid women and ghost in plain sight and do all the things. And you could still get falsely accused of sexual harassment at your job, lose your job, get blacklisted in your industry, and still not ever have any opportunity to fix that in any way. So with that being said, I think that's important to kind of really think about. So with that in mind, I just thought it was important to kind of reiterate and say, look, it took Blue Shogun 2 years. It took him 2 years to get back on his feet. And he had help. He had all kinds of support and help. Most men don't. Most men don't have these opportunities to have people step in and help them. And then when they do have the opportunities, they don't know how to handle it. They figure out something, or maybe there was some aspect of that help that they didn't get, and they run the risk of losing it. Thankfully, Blue Shogun didn't lose the help he got. Almost got kicked out of his transitional housing because of a rule he wasn't even aware of. So bear that in mind. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of moving parts here, and there are a lot of obstacles in men's path to rebuild their lives after they've had their lives destroyed through homelessness or divorce rape or any of the associated things that are there. So with that said, go ahead, Blue Shogun.
Okay. So yes, you're very right. If you really want to get out of homelessness, especially as a man, you have to do everything in your power. And like you were saying, I was fortunate enough not to have child support, alimony, or things like that weighing me down, because if I did, I think things undoubtedly would have been much, much harder.
Well, now, yeah, and let me make another point here. And I apologize for interrupting you, but I think this is important. You're a natural-born American citizen, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. And when you were living in the Northwest, whether or not you're living there now or not is irrelevant. You know a lot of other American citizens who are working in the tech industry or who are tech industry trained. Is that correct?
I've met several people, yeah.
Okay. And are many of those people contractors?
No, I've met a lot of contractors throughout my time, yes.
Yeah,
Contingency is rampant.
Yeah, my point is that, there are a lot of immigrants who are taking American jobs, and they're taking the full-time American jobs, and our American citizens are being forced to contract and work in a gig economy because these tech companies are farming out American jobs. They are farming out American jobs to people from other countries because they don't want to pay the market value wages. They don't give a shit about American citizens at all. And I think that's an issue because, again, if we're not hiring American citizens, why are we shipping immigrants in there to take American jobs? I think that's an issue. And again, the companies that are doing this are some of the most gynocentric companies out there. They're, Google, Amazon, Facebook. They're all virtue signaling for social justice and feminism, and they're all refusing to hire Americans trained. I can tell you right now that, I've been in the Northwest for over 40 years. And I remember when the tech industry first came into the Pacific Northwest, and every Starbucks barista was a tech person. Every person working I knew people that were highly trained tech professionals who were working at like Best Buy. and CompUSA, for those who remember that. CompUSA no longer exists. And, all these, and again, they couldn't find full-time work because all their jobs were offshored. So, again, it's the gynocentric companies that are doing it. It's not the companies that care about American citizens. And it's the same people who are attacking men. It's the same people who are attacking marriage. It's the same people who are attacking family values. They're also shipping American jobs overseas as well. And I wanted to make sure that that point was made because, people miss that aspect of it, but I think it's a crucial element.
It is. I mean, you have all these companies that are hiring H-1Bs from other countries. And they know that they can actually hold that H-1B over them. I know I've heard the story from Amazon about this guy he's either from Cambodia, Vietnam, one of the two. And he's working like 60 hours a week. And this guy is just broken because he has no life and all he does is work, work, work. He works himself to the bone, and the company, they know it, and they know that he can't exactly quit and look for a new job because they hold that visa over his head. And if he loses his visa, not only does he have to go back to his own country, he also has to face his family as a disgrace. So yes, he's in that position, and he is really, really depressed about it. He literally cried about it too.
And the sad part about it is it's not like they're hiring the best and the brightest no matter what. I mean, it's not like it's a fair playing field. I know guys who have twice the qualifications of the immigrant that comes over, yet they hire the immigrant instead. So, again, if this was about merit, if this was about hiring the most qualified candidate, well, then do that. But the way that these gynocentric companies are discriminating against men and driving men to homelessness is they are all of a sudden putting these artificial qualifications in place so they don't have to hire them. Let me give an example. And Shogun, you can back me up on this. Many tech companies require you, in order to get a job with them, to have a driver's license. If you don't have a driver's license, you are automatically disqualified, and in many cases, you won't even get an interview. Now, the reason that they do this, and you can confirm that's a thing, right?
Yep, that is a thing.
Now, let me explain why they do this. The reason that they do this is because if you are 6 months behind in your child support, you lose your license. So they can discriminate against fathers who are trying to pay their child support and refuse to pay them and keep them behind so that these fathers can get discriminated against just by saying, you need a driver's license to be able to hit the enter key on your computer. You need a driver's license to be able to move your mouse and to turn on your computer and to do your networking job. It's all bullshit. It's all complete bullshit. And it is a form of systemic misandry that drives men to homelessness. And people don't understand exactly how severe and how systemic the problem is. But most jobs now, in order to discriminate against men, if you do not have a driver's license, you do not get a job. Even if you can catch the bus to and from work. Even if you live in a metropolitan area where you can't park, where it's $100 a day to park and you're going to catch the bus into work. If you don't have a driver's license, they are not going to hire you. And the reason that they aren't is because, again, it allows them to discriminate against fathers who are paying child support. Now, there's nothing about the job that requires a driver's license. You don't have to drive anywhere for the job. You don't have to, park cars or anything. It's not like you're a valet. But this is one of the artificial creations that they do. The other thing that they do is they run your credit check. Now, why do they do that? Well, because if you are behind in your child support, that goes on your credit. If you're divorced and you don't pay your bills, or your ex-wife doesn't pay her portion of the bills because of part of the divorce decree, your credit goes to shit. My credit's been destroyed twice because of both divorces. Now, in that case, they can go, oh, well, your credit's bad. Well, you're a bad risk, and we're going to not consider you. Now, you could have references from your current employer that say that you are the best employer or the best employee that they have ever had. And none of that shit matters because they can discriminate against you based on your credit reference. They can discriminate against you based on not having a driver's license. And so any man who has been divorce raped, any man who has been falsely accused of domestic violence and has had his life destroyed, any man who has been falsely accused of sexual harassment and has lost his job as a direct result of it, that man is going to have his life destroyed, and he is going to be blacklisted from his industry. And a lot of men don't have the time or the energy or the wherewithal to go and retrain for another industry. You got a guy who goes and gets a 4, a 6, or an 8-year degree, and then he ends up spending, 5 to 10 years working in his industry, learning everything about his industry. Only now, if he gets divorce raped, or if he gets a false domestic violence claim against him, or he, gets basically trapped with a kid because she said she was on birth control and she wasn't, now all of a sudden this man can't work in his field. These things all are major contributors to homelessness, and people don't see it that way. They don't consider it, and they don't look at this. But these issues are very insidious, and they are very systemic in nature. And this is why men are like, oh my God, the world is gynocentric, and holy shit, men don't have a chance. And no, they don't, because once you're down, feminists want to keep you there. And it's the feminists that are running these companies. It is the feminists that are running Amazon. They are running Facebook, and they are running Google. And you see this, and it's not just in the tech industries either. You see this in local government. You see this in a variety of well-paying, career-driven jobs. And that is why people are like, holy shit, we don't see any problems here. And, you get these fucking trad cons and these PUAs, and they turn around and they're like, well, you just got to toughen it up. You just got to toughen it up. You just got to, choose a different woman, or, you just got to suck it up and handle it. Well, the problem is that men do everything in their power to deal with their problems on their own. And no man is an island. And we all need to be able to, at least emotionally, we all need to be able to support one another. Women get all this support. There are over 4,000 charities in the United States with the word woman in the title. Okay. How many billions of dollars are these charities shitting all over women every day? Women have over 150 gender-based super PACs to fund their political organizations. There is a league of women voters everywhere to push misandry, to target men, and to push this bigoted feminist agenda. So if you guys think for a second that this is not systemic in nature and that feminists don't run shit, you're not paying attention. So I apologize for that rant a little bit. But Blue Shogun, so now let's talk about this. So now that you have, it took you 2 years to get back on your feet. Talk about the differences in homelessness aid between women and men, and tell me what you think the best thing, if you're a homeless man, tell me the things that homeless men in your mind need to do in order to break the cycle of homelessness, especially if they're chronically homeless.
Okay. I mean, especially if they're what? You cut out for a second.
Chronically homeless.
Okay. So when you're a man, you essentially have to do everything, almost everything and anything that you can possibly do to get off the streets. Because let's face it, when you're a woman.
Hold on for a second. I need to address something. Okay. Mac Crick 1980 says, emotional support between men, that's not going to happen. Well, no, it's not going to happen if you're a cuck. But let me tell you something. When you go in the military and you spend time, especially like in the army, or you become a war veteran, men do become friends. They do become brothers, and they do provide emotional support to one another. And before gynocentrism, men supported one another all the goddamn time. There used to be multi-generational groups of men who would support one another. Like, fathers would take their sons hunting with their grandfathers, or they would go out and, build a barn in the backyard type of thing. A lot of men used to support one another. Now, I'm not saying hold each other's hand or wipe each other's ass or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that if you see other men as your competition, your friends, to the point where you have to backstab them, then maybe you need to reassess your friends and you need to reassess your attitudes. Because this idea that men don't support each other, yeah, you're right. But I'll tell you what. The world has lived since second wave feminism. We've lived 40 years of gynocentric oppression where masculinity has been demonized, where men have been targeted. And I know somebody, I think he said he's from Australia. Australia is a shit show when it comes to masculinity. But it used to be in the 80s, Australians were considered like the badass masculine men. And now it's like, holy shit, they're not anymore. I mean, there's probably parts of Australia where the men still are masculine. But Jesus Christ, the soy is strong with some of these guys. So, with that said, I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to address that point because I think it's important. Go ahead, Blue Shogun.
Okay, yeah. And before I forget, there's a handful of things that I do want to mention here before I forget, because domestic violence has a lot to do with this as well. Because I really do need to touch on that, but I'll get to that in a moment. So, but going back to what you need to do as a man. Okay, now what you need to do is first of all realize that there's not going to be a lot of help out there for you because I mean most of the help out there is for women, even though they're not nearly as great of victims as men are. Because now I'm going to point out something that I've seen here in the streets. Now I've seen a white woman lying on the street outside of a Starbucks. I mean, she was motionless. And yes, there were plenty of white knights coming to dial 911 to get an ambulance for her. But as a black man, chances are that's not going to happen because I see black men laying out on the streets, whether they're sleeping out cold or whatever. And some people will just assume, oh, he must just passed out on drugs or alcohol. So yeah, he deserved it. And maybe every once in a while, I've only seen one person get medical attention for a homeless black man just laid out on the sidewalk.
Well, and let me
on his back.
Yeah, and let me say
I'm
something.
sorry. There's one more thing I wanted to mention here.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, because you didn't see people stopping to see, oh, what's wrong. You saw the paramedics from the fire department checking him out and trying to get him medical attention. But at the same time, there was a white woman standing right in front of him with a sign trying to panhandle. It was the most disrespectful, the most trifling thing I've ever seen some of those white cunts do. And I've seen them do some really filthy and disgusting things.
Well,
but yeah, go ahead, DJ.
Yeah, my point is that, and here's the thing: people act like the Pacific Northwest is like this den of social justice. The reality is, if you're a heterosexual male in the Puget Sound or anywhere that is controlled by feminism and controlled by the social justice movement, men are second-class citizens. Period. It doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter if you're white, if you're black, or whatever. It's the fact of the matter is, if you are a heterosexual male, you are a second-class citizen, and nobody wants to help you. And if you are somewhat successful, everybody targets you. And that's the thing. It is the gender, and I've seen this dozens of times. And again, I've lived in the Northwest a long time, and it is a complete shit show. Nobody gives a fuck. If you're, like I said, if you're a heterosexual male and you have normal T levels, nobody cares about you.
Right. So to continue what I was saying here is that as a man, you have to take whatever you can get, and you have to constantly watch your back, make sure that nobody is like conspiring against you, because I've seen it happen. I mean, at least the place I was in, people can conspire against you to get you kicked out, and that's happened before. And that rarely happens for women, except for in the case of beautiful women. I mean, ugly women competing for the men with the beautiful women, and trying to get the beautiful women kicked out because the ugly ones want the men for themselves. I've also heard stories about that as well. But because once again, you're under the microscope, and you have to stay out of trouble, and you have to keep your record as clean as possible. I'm fortunate enough to have a clean record, no felonies. No misdemeanors, nothing like that. Not even a speeding ticket or a parking ticket. None of that. My record is spotless. The only thing I had against me at the time was bad credit due to that eviction. And yes, and even then, it still took me 2 years. During the time I was there, I seen women get their subsidiaries in less than that. There was this one woman who was constantly breaking, the terms of service. And she got it sooner than I did. No, she didn't get the boot. And because she has issues with alcoholism, and she drinks a lot. And one of the terms of agreement is that you do not drink on the premises, and you do not come back to the premises drunk. But if you want to leave and get drunk, that is your own business. But at the same time, you have to stay sober, clean sober, and you have to attend AA meetings if you're an alcoholic, or if you had a history of alcoholism. Now, she has broken those terms, and she still got into the place that I was going to be moving in. And initially I thought they were giving her they were giving her my place that was intended for me. Now I made that that wasn't the case, fortunately, but they still gave her leeway. Even there were even other women that while they were there, they caused all sorts of issues. They caused drama. They caused fights and all sorts of other nonsense, and even death threats. I mean, now stuff like that, when you're a man, you get kicked out immediately. I've seen that happen. But if you're a woman, they tend to give you some leeway. Maybe they'll give you like a couple of days before they give you the boot. Because one time there was, okay, I was in my place, in my room sleeping. I was enjoying the sweet bliss of sleep. It's only sudden to be woken up by a black woman's voice. And all I heard was, bitch. And I woke up like, whoa, what's going on here? And it turns out that she was getting into a fight with another woman. And what happened was they didn't kick her out, even though she assaulted this other woman, because she didn't actually hit her, even though she tried. Because people had to hold her back because, she's a big woman. But there was another story about two other guys who was supposedly standing behind another guy, and he was holding a knife, a butter knife at that. It wasn't, I don't believe it was a meat cutting knife or anything like that. And the guy that he was standing behind, he freaked out and says, "No, stay away from me," because he thought he was trying to stab him. And I don't really know the whole story, but he got kicked out, even whether he was actually trying to stab him or not. He was given the boot. There was another story about this guy who had allegedly said something inappropriate to a transgender woman, and he got kicked out. But it eventually got overturned because, for one, the transgender woman even said that it was no big deal. You're taking this way too seriously, and they found out the whole thing was basically bogus anyway. So they let him back in, fortunately. But that was like the only case that I've seen where where his eviction actually got overturned. So yes, once again, as a man, you're going to be under the microscope. But if you keep to yourself and you're not constantly in the politics and the drama and so forth, and just make sure that nobody knows exactly what you're doing all the time. I mean, not being like too social. That's a big thing there. Then it'll be a lot easier for you, because I found out that when you have too many quote unquote friends, you'll also have plenty of enemies alongside of you. Now, I got along with everybody else, at least to their face they did, but you never know when there's someone that just didn't like you.
Well, I'm of the opinion that if you're in a situation like that, you be friendly, but you don't be anybody's friend, and you keep your distance from everybody. You lay low and you don't draw fire. And this is true for gynocentric jobs. If you're in a job where you're working with women, especially women who identify as feminists openly, you need to be very, very careful. Lay low, don't draw fire, stay out of the limelight as much as you can, and just do your job. And just because a woman says that she's not a feminist doesn't mean she's not a problem, because feminism won. So a lot of women don't have to identify as feminists anymore in order to benefit from that feminist system. So you need to really, really be careful when it comes to that. So with that said, Blue Shogun, we are running out of conversation time, so let's get to the Q&A. I appreciate you coming on and talking about homelessness today. So thank you.
Okay. Is there one more thing that I can mention?
Yeah. I was going to say, one last thing before we move on to Q&A. Go for it.
Okay. So this is the final thing that I want to mention, because this is also important. When you're there, they're going to be bombarding you with statistics and other things, such as like domestic violence and the statistics behind it. Well, they didn't actually show the various statistics on the posters that they posted around the place. They were essentially posting things that were causing you to question yourself, like, have you been abusing your wife? Have you been abusing your girlfriend? Do I hurt her? Or have I been a good man to her? And things like that.
So you're saying that they were gaslighting?
Yes, essentially they were. Now, because they started posting these things up around the place. And eventually I got pissed off and I wrote the real statistics on there. I wrote that 70% of non-reciprocal domestic violence is initiated by women. as well as roughly 55% of domestic violence overall is initiated by women, reciprocal and non-reciprocal. And there were some other things that I wrote as well. And also I risked getting kicked out for even writing things like this on these posters. But you know what? They got taken down. And that was the entire goal. So yeah, it's like that. The feminists are going to be trying to condition you. So remember, knowledge is power, and it's your greatest weapon. So yeah, the last thing you ever want to do is even be convicted of domestic violence, especially when it comes to being homeless and going through like the transitional housing system. So yeah, yeah, that's another reason why other men become homeless. Because I knew guys that essentially one guy, he just held his girlfriend's wrist to just stop her from hitting him. And he still got the cops called on him, and he still got arrested. So yeah, I just wanted to bring up the domestic violence thing, and that they're going to try and gaslight you, and they're going to try and brainwash you and repeat the same lies over and over again to get you to believe it. And they want you to leave believing that nonsense, that you are the perpetrator and that she is the victim.
Right. Well, I appreciate it again. Lone Wolf, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we have a few.
Okay. So before we get started, guys, if you have a question for Blue Shogun or myself, please put in the chat, put question and then who the question is to, and then go ahead and cite the question. And as usual, please do not ask multi-part questions because they're a lot more difficult to answer, and it makes it a little bit harder for everybody else to get their questions in. And then if you are on a PC or you're on, I think it's Twitch TV, you can use the Bukkake choke slams that float up on the right-hand side of the screen occasionally. If you hover your mouse over, you'll see a question mark that'll appear. You click that, you redeem the question, and your question is recorded in Streamlabs. I do have a single question there. I think it's from last week, but we'll get to the Lone Wolf's questions first. We'll do the Streamlabs questions last. So go for it, Lone Wolf.
All right. I'm not going to try this guy's name. It just looks weird, but he's asking if you can bring forth a lawsuit about the driver's license discrimination.
Unfortunately, almost every employer does it now. So, I mean, mid-sized employers are doing it. Large employers are doing it. It's not related to the job. So technically it could be considered discrimination. But that kind of lawsuit would be expensive because, again, feminism controls society. And as long as they control society, you're going to have the entire industry turn against you because they've all been indoctrinated. So, in a cost-benefit analysis, really the better choice would be to find jobs that don't require the driver's license if you're somebody who owes child support, or find a way to lower your child support into more realistic levels. So, I mean, and those are uphill battles as well. I want to make sure that that's abundantly clear. But I think that a lawsuit against something like that would be a waste of time. I honestly think that if somebody was going to file a lawsuit against anything related to feminism, they should be going after the Duluth model, because the Duluth model is a proven fraud, and any money that's been given to any organization from the government with regard to the Duluth model could be recovered based on that fraud. Next question.
All right. The next question is from Smart Pervert BG4. What's with these help wanted signs that when you're going into apply for the job, they say you need 3 to 5 years of experience?
Well, that's a given. And the issue is that a lot of jobs, people don't understand, you can't just hire anybody off the street to do those particular jobs. And even though the employees or the people who are currently working in those jobs, the reason they want the 3 to 5 years experience is because they know the jobs, but they're shitty trainers. In other words, they know how to do the job, but they don't know how to train someone else how to do the job. So they want to have people with 3 to 5 years experience because, again, they don't have the ability to train. And I would, when you look at some of the help wanted signs, I mean, sometimes it's understandable, but most of the time it's not. So, look at those types of things. The other thing I'd say too is when it comes to your experience, think of skills that you may have, or think of experience that you may have that may translate into that experience. And then sometimes, be willing to have a conversation with that employer and say, look, I've done this, and that, and that's related to what you're doing. I can translate those skills across, and then go from there.
Okay. All right. The next question is from Rick Rules 007. He wants to know why men are not lashing out violently at this point.
Oh, men used to. Men used to lash out violently, but the problem that you have, and TFM kind of went over it last night during the TFM show, it was, you have to understand that when feminists first came out with their agenda, they got all the white knights from the TradCon movement, from traditional conservatives, to white knight for them. They're like, oh my God, we're victims and we need protection. So they got all these TradCons to white knight for them, and they packaged it up in a way to make people believe that they were victims. And it was all a lie. So all these TradCons were like, oh, well, they're white knight protectors. And that's what, I mean, in a patriarchal system, being a white knight is not necessarily always a bad thing. But in a feminist system, it absolutely is, because white knights are getting themselves set up to be manipulated. And then once all the enemies are gone, the feminists turn against the white knights, and then they hashtag me to them and destroy their lives and destroy their careers. So we have had some people lose their shit. But the problem is that feminism controls the media and feminism controls the public square. So anytime one of these men lashes out, they reframe it as something that it's not. I mean, look at the guy that just killed his wife and his kids. Okay. I'm not saying that anybody should do that. And I don't promote unnecessary violence. However, he doesn't think those kids are his. He's asking for DNA tests on the kids because he wants to show that his ex-wife, who's dead, was a slut, and that he killed her because she was a slut. And the reason he probably wants to do that, and I'm just armchair quarterbacking here, is because he wants to show an insanity defense, to show, look, she lied to me. I believed everything she said. She was a slut. None of my kids were mine. I lost my shit and I killed her in a fit of PTSD or a fit of whatever. And they don't want him to use that as a defense. So the court has said, no, you can't have the DNA tests because we don't want you to prove that she was a slut. Every few years you see a man commit suicide, or you see a man go after and lose his shit and kill these women. And the way the feminists have reframed it is, oh, look, it's another example of patriarchal domestic violence. This proves domestic violence is an issue, when really this guy was driven to violence and this guy was driven to suicide. So, it's a double-edged sword. If you become violent, you get reframed as a statistic. If you don't become violent, you get run over. So you have to figure out a way to get yourself out of the system with the least amount of damage. Unfortunately, when it comes to these relationships and these divorce rape situations, there really are no good decisions. You have to choose the best of a bad situation to get yourself out. Next question.
I also wanted to mention that it seems like a lot of men are oblivious to the whole thing and that they don't want to believe it. I believe that's the other reason why they won't lash out.
Well, sure. But you also have to understand, too, like even MRAs, when MRAs were becoming a thing and they were starting to gain traction, they were demonized. So nobody wanted to be a part of the MRA movement because they were being witch hunted. So again,
right.
It's a huge issue. Next question.
Right. Okay. Smart Pervert BG4. You must be new around here, so welcome. And he asks, why can women treat men like crap and always get away with it?
Because there will always be cucks to defend her. You have to understand that women only get away with what we allow. If you refuse, I see these women all the time treat their significant others like garbage. Now, I'm not saying that there are no men out there who treat their women like shit. That's not what I'm saying. But I see a lot of women who dismiss and discount their significant others. They think that, because I have a vagina, that you just need to do what the fuck I tell you, that I'm the prize or that I'm this or I'm that. Well, feminism taught us that no, you're not. And so women treat men like crap because men have been taught to accept it. They have been indoctrinated to accept it. You see, under a patriarchal system, it used to be, and this again, prior to second wave feminism taking control of society, it used to be that a man would be inspired to go out and get a good job. He'd be inspired to get himself a house, a good car. And then he would go and search for, a woman to make a wife and have kids and to create a family with. Well, feminists knew that. So they took advantage of it. And so they changed the rules and then never told men about it. And so they told men, oh yeah, you got to go continue to do that. These men would go do it. And then they would get cheated on. They would get divorce raped. They would get falsely accused of things. And men would have no recourse. And so they wouldn't know what to do because everything they were taught turned out to be wrong. And it wasn't that it was bad wisdom. It was that society changed and feminists changed the rules. So now we're in a situation where we have two groups of men. We have men who see women for what they really are as far as modern women and the way they've changed. And then we have men who are white knights who still believe in that old Leave It to Beaver idea of the male-female social contract that feminism actually destroyed. And so there's a lot of ignorance out there. And even though the education is coming, it's still pretty slow. Next question.
Okay. Maiden Rosetta asks, for Blue Shogun, were homeless women giving sexual favors in order to have more benefits?
For starters, I would not put it past them. And yes, there are other women that were giving out sex to other guys. I mean, for what in particular, I don't know. I just know that it had to have happened because there were some women that were announcing that, essentially announcing that I want the D. Now I may want the D for a little protection, and so on. I just know that I know there were at least two women that were taking advantage of a couple of guys, or at least were trying to. I know one was trying to, and the other just successfully did so. Now, the first one was an Asian woman. Now, she was Chinese. Now, now this guy was like helping her out and doing all sorts of favors for her. But when it came to the time where he said, hey, could you please do something for me because I really need it? And she would not do it for him. What it was, I don't know in particular. Because this is part of what I've heard through the grapevine. And then, he essentially what it did was it kind of like depressed him, and he ended up relapsing, and he got kicked out. So yeah, that was what happened to him. There was another one. Now this woman was from Romania. I'm not going to say her name because let's just say
let's just call her Thought and move on.
Okay, yeah, Thought. So anyway, I got along great with her, but that she had her own little way of trying to get under a man just for maybe a little protection or maybe for some favors. But yes, she went to the guy who was ex-military. I mean, the one guy that you probably didn't want to mess with. I mean, this guy, he may not have been a complete tank, but yeah, he was ex-military, and if you got in a fight with him, he would probably break you in two. So, but that guy wasn't falling for it. He was smart enough not to go for it. So, yeah, there were women that would try to take advantage of men and try to get favors, whether it be sexual or not. And yes, and even though she got kicked out of the place, next thing you know, as the day she was leaving, she was left with some guy in a Ford Mustang, an orange Ford Mustang. So yeah, these women, they know how to rope a guy along, and they know how to fall right on their backs.
There you go. All right, next question.
Okay, Embudo, thanks for being here. But
skip that question.
Yeah.
Go to the next one.
Okay, it's on you if you want that.
No, skip that question.
Okay, there we go. There's your answer. Macrick 1980 asks for both of you guys, how does one cope with depression?
Okay, so depression. I'm sorry. Go ahead, DDJ.
No. Go ahead. You can start out, and then I'll give my piece. Go for it.
Okay, so now this is another thing that would affect a lot of homeless people, especially men, that they frequently are diagnosed with depression. Because I noticed this because when I was screening every person to get in, they would actually write down their list of ailments, their mental health issues. So that was a big thing to note because a lot of these people had mental health issues and they needed their medication. And depression was the number one thing that they were dealing with chronically. Now, how to deal with it? That is a very good question because now some people, they take meds, others just have coping mechanisms, and others, they just deal with it because they don't really have some sort of support mechanism to actually deal with it. Because I experienced some depression, but not the chronic kind. At least I was never diagnosed with chronic depression. So what I did was I focused on my hobbies. Now I had my laptop, my MacBook, and I would continuously just work towards, a better Shogun. trying to work on my apps, trying to build up my portfolio, my resume. And then that was just my rocket fuel to just stay focused and eventually just become self-sufficient. And it did pay off. I was able to, I mean, because when I got my subsidiary, that's when I noticed that things job wise started getting much, much better. I started getting much better contracts. I started getting paid more. I went from making, like 11.25 an hour to 22, then going from there to like 38 and so forth. So yeah, focus on your passions. It was assuming you're not being medicated. Or I mean, well, it doesn't matter whether you're being medicated or not. Focus on your passions. Focus on what makes you happy, and focus on what's going to benefit you in the future as you are exiting the homeless period.
All right. So my position is a little bit different. Most men go through depression as a part of a response to their environment and as a response to a situation that is currently happening in their life. And so whether that is a breakdown of a relationship or whether that's, not achieving societal expectations. I mean, there's a big push out there to make people feel insecure if they're not buying the latest car or buying the right brand of clothing or purchasing a house at a particular time. So the first thing I would say is that how does one cope with depression? You need to start practicing the Zen of zero fucks given. Don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself. Compare yourself to, how you were previously and how you've improved on your life. And if you have people around you who are negative, get them the fuck out of your life. You need to reduce the drama in your life. And part of that drama reduction means don't watch drama. Don't watch, talk shows. Don't watch drama tubers. Stay away from those types of things. Because again, all those things add stress to your life. Secondly, create systems in your life. Create some stability, because systems create stability. I mean, there's people out there like Zig Ziglar who talk about organizing your life and improving your life. Tony Robbins talks about the same types of things. And I'm not saying those specifically go to those only, but there's a lot of people out there that talk about self-improvement. And part of coping with depression is organizing yourself. If you've got a messy house or you've got a messy bedroom or, your living space is cluttered, declutter it. Clutter fosters depression. And then in addition to the cluttering and the cleaning, make sure that you get out of your house. Make sure if you live in an apartment complex, for example, go take a daily walk to the local park. Even if it's 15 or 20 minutes, they found that people who are depressed, who go out and get a little bit of nature and, get outside, those people do better. If you're in an area where you can't do those things, then move. Your health is more important than your job. Your health is more important than your neighborhood that you live in. And if you are paying more than 50% of your monthly income in your bills, then you need to change your life around in order to not do that. Most of these, now I look at the question here and it says that, you've tried therapy, you've tried pills, you've tried these other things. Maybe it's because one of these scenarios in your life, it's not chemical. Most depression that men go through is situational and it's experiential. It's not chemical in nature. And so when you get outside and you get that healthy environment and you declutter your life and you start eating healthfully, those things are important. Because I'll tell you, the other thing that affects depression is sugar intake, it's carbohydrate intake, and it's basically unhealthy diet. So, the other piece, and again, I was about to get to that. Somebody talked about exercise. Exercise is extremely important, but most people, especially men, when they talk about exercise, they think about, lifting weights. They think about going to the gym and lifting weights. Listen, you can do convict conditioning and you can do strength training with body weight. You don't need to go to a gym. Gyms are gynocentric now and they're shit shows. Learn to work out on your own. So, go through and do body weight strength training, do yoga, do stretching. Men need to stretch more often. And especially men get a lot of back problems. So they need to be thinking about like modified neck bridges and things like that. Take care of yourself, take care of your health, do some stretching every day and do an actual exercise at least 3 times a week. Those things will help you proper diet, proper care, all those things impact your emotional state and impact your depression state. And then finally, like what Blue Shogun said, take up a hobby. Find a hobby that you could do within your budget and take it up. And also, I would say this in addition to that, go read. And if you don't have a lot of money, go to the library and check out books. Read one fiction book a month, read one nonfiction book a month, but educate yourself and try to learn a new word every week. Now, I'm actually going to be doing a 2-part video series on kind of some of how to reorganize your life and kind of how to stay healthy as part of my dojo series, where I'm going to go into some of this stuff a little bit in more detail. But I think that it's really important because a lot of times depression for men is situational, and that's why it doesn't get solved. And a lot of guys think, well, I don't understand how I'm not fixing this depression. You're living under siege. You're living under siege. Your neighborhood is gynocentric. You have to look over your shoulder all the time. I went to San Francisco and a couple of years ago, and I had to go to City Hall to handle some business there. And I was sitting outside waiting for City Hall to open, and I was watching all the people walk back and forth, from the homeless to the professionals to everybody else. And in downtown San Francisco, everybody looked hunted. They were all looking over their shoulder. They were all looking at me and other people like they were a threat. And they were like in this huge stressed area. Every one of these people was undergoing stress. And when you live like that every day of your life, that shit takes its toll. And you have to change the way you live. And frankly, some of these tech jobs, some of these high-paying jobs may not be worth it. If you're a man going your own way and you don't have a lot of kids and shit around you, and your stress level's super high and you're working 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, maybe you need to go think about doing something else. Maybe take some of that money and go move to a small town in rural America somewhere and, start your life over. But, you don't necessarily need to be making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year. I mean, I know there's some guys out there that are pretty successful, but you don't need very much money to live. I mean, I've looked all over the country and I found at least a dozen different communities, just looking on Zillow and looking at cost of living and everything else. I have found a dozen communities where a man can live on his own in a single bedroom apartment for under $1,000 a month. That's food. That's everything that he needs. So, you could pick up, if your life is stressful or you're living in some social justice shithole, you could pick up and move to one of these communities and go get a goddamn job at a gas station making minimum wage at 40 hours a week, and you would have enough to live on. Now, I'm not saying that it's the perfect life, but it gets you away from some of the consumerism. It gets you away from some of the drama and some of that we got to keep up with the Joneses bullshit that really creates a lot of this stress and which leads to the depression. Because the idea is to stop the depression before it starts, in addition to changing your environment in such a way that you can handle it. And then finally, the last piece I would say is this. Think about meditation. Think about calming yourself. Turn off all your electronics 30 minutes before you go to bed. Those types of things are extremely helpful. Make sure you get enough sleep. Sleep apnea for men is one of the most underdiagnosed diseases that men suffer everywhere in the Western world. So having enough sleep, making sure you've got good sleep, making sure that sleep is solid is huge. Because if you're not sleeping, even if you're in bed for 12 hours a night and you're only sleeping for 3, that's going to contribute to depression in addition to heart disease risk, stroke risk, high blood pressure, and everything else. So understand that those things are there. So don't neglect, your physicals and your doctor's appointments and things like that. But all those things contribute to stress and depression.
Yeah, DDJ is definitely right. And because you are what you eat. And if you're not eating healthy and you're constantly absorbing, the drama from these reality shows, then yeah, you're essentially going to feel like crap. Because I noticed that people that watched that show, even while I was homeless, they acted. I mean, let's watch stuff like Basketball Wives and so on and so on. They acted like that. I know this one woman who watched that stuff religiously, and she was just the most drama-filled person I'd ever seen there. And yes, it is. Stay away from the drama. Stay away from the negativity. In addition to what DJ and I just said, that helps immensely.
Thank you. Next question.
All right, this one's from Artemis the Kitten. I just saw an article talking about the Supreme Court case in which a Colorado baker refused a gay couple his service. Does this not set a precedent for future cases? Can you explain why that does not set a precedent?
First and foremost, I think it's the United States Supreme Court. I remember the case. Anytime the United States Supreme Court comes down with a case, they can narrowly construe the case where it may not apply to many cases, but it will apply to very similar cases. It sounds like the article's full of shit. So I wouldn't trust the article. I would read the actual opinion itself. And I think that one of the situations here that most people miss, especially when it comes to court cases, especially when it comes to United States Supreme Court cases, is they take other people's opinion about the case and they don't read the fucking case for themselves. These cases are publicly available. You can download the PDF and read the case from cover to cover if you want. Now, if you don't understand certain things about it, there are online legal dictionaries you can go to see how they're using terms. And then once you've read the case, once you've tried to understand the terms, then go to the articles and see what the other articles' opinions are. Once you've read those other articles' opinions, then go back to the case and reread it. And once you've reread it, go from there. Somebody shut a door. What's going on?
Sorry, that's just me looking for my shirt.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if you were like heading to the bathroom to take a shit. So
I got that out of the way for the show.
Probably for the best. So yeah, so I mean, it's read the case, understand the case. Don't listen to somebody else's. And again, this goes the same thing is true for studies. Don't take somebody's opinion on what a study says. If you can access the study yourself, read it for yourself and learn about it. But don't listen to somebody's secondhand opinion, because I found that a lot of times their opinion is wrong or it's hit and miss. So you have the study in hand. If they like, for instance, if they write the article, for example, and they have no link to the case, or they write an article and they have no link to the study, odds are they're misinterpreting the study. Next question.
Okay, from Old Dirty Bastard. Could he who shall not be named break the conditioning and bring a lawsuit under RICO statutes?
It's actually kind of funny. I was talking with somebody about that the other day who is an attorney. And I think I've seen RICO be applied to civil cases before. Honestly, I think that when it comes to that, I think that what he should be using, if it were me and I were him, I would be using Packingham versus North Carolina. And I would be like, look, you guys have said that this is a public square and they're limiting my free speech rights. I have free speech protections here, and they are discriminating against me because I am a heterosexual white male. That is a protected class. Now, the second thing that I would do, if you've watched my most recent video, I would sue them for fraud. I would sue them for fraud in the AdSense revenue because they are contacting advertisers, and I think that the adpocalypse was artificially created. And I would use the Breitbart article to back that up. And I would subpoena Breitbart to get those screenshots, because Breitbart withheld the actual screenshot to protect the person that's there. And then I would go balls deep discovery into big tech that took me off their platforms. But I think that false advertising is a good way to go. I think that conspiracy to discriminate against a group of individuals who are heterosexual white males, I think, is a good way to go. I think tortious interference with a business relationship is a good way to go. There are constitutional issues here as well as tortious issues here. And so if I were the attorney, and I'm not saying, and again, this isn't legal advice, this is just my personal opinion because I'm not an attorney. But if I were an attorney, this is what I would do. And then what I would do is I would have all large content creators join in a class action lawsuit. And the way I would fund it is I'd say, look, give me a month of your AdSense revenue. We'll put it into a fund and we'll use it to hire an attorney. And I would not sue in state court. I would sue in federal court. Suing in state court for a situation like this is like masturbation with no payoff. All you're doing is throwing good money out the window. This is going to go to the United States Federal Supreme Court because it has to go through the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit Court is cancer. The Ninth Circuit Appellate Court is social justice cancer, and so is the courts in California State. Because of federal issue, because you have plaintiffs located all around the country, you now have the keys to the federal court. You file in federal court, you ask for punitive damages, and you let them kick your ass all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. Then once you get there, you let this conservative Supreme Court beat the ever-living shit out of them. But you need to understand, you have to be able to keep fighting until that Supreme Court happens. And the problem is that everybody wants somebody else to save them. This is the issue. Everybody is expecting somebody else to do the job. So, all these content creators turned around and they're like, oh, we need to turn everything into a public utility. I did a video recently talking about why that's wrong. Why would you want to give government-sanctioned monopolies to these big tech companies, these big tech social media companies? Because that's really what turning them into a public utility would do. It's the wrong way forward. Then I hear, well, maybe we could form a union and we can push a union. Okay, so now you get more socialization. That doesn't help anybody either. That dilutes the ability for people to deal with this. We have tools at our disposal in the United States to hold these tech companies responsible. It's called sue them into the Stone Ages in federal court. And frankly, Alex Jones is the guy to do it. But I'll tell you, the thing about Alex Jones and the reason why, yes, I know I named him Haster. The reason why it's important is because big tech has now targeted the fourth estate. When they targeted InfoWars, a journalistic outlet, and you can love them or hate them, they targeted the fourth estate. They've been targeting the fourth estate for a while. They've been targeting conservative journalists everywhere. And now they're interfering with political campaigns. They are interfering with our elections. Now, we know from experience all the way as far back as 2010 that social media plays a role in elections. And now that we know, based on the United States Supreme Court ruling in Packenham versus North Carolina, we now know that the online space is the public square and deserves free speech protection rights. We can now extrapolate from that and our experience there that when you censor candidates, when you censor political speech, you are violating the First Amendment of the Constitution under color of law. And frankly, I think that any big tech company that goes out of its way and does this and bans political candidates, you should be ineligible for government contracts. Google has contracts with the United States government. Facebook has contracts with the United States government. Twitter has contracts with the United States government. I think a strong case could be made to say, look, fuck you and the horse you killed to get here. You guys are discriminating against people who are white heterosexual males, which, by the way, are a protected class. This is racism and sexism, which, again, our civil rights laws protect. But you're sitting here and you're saying, look, you can't have government contracts because you guys are fucking bigots. I mean, Jesus Christ, they've admitted it. They have gone out of their way and admitted it. Even Jack Dorsey from Twitter just admitted that he has a left-leaning bias. So he's admitted his entire platform is biased, but the facts speak for themselves. They don't need anybody's opinion, and everybody's like, well, we don't have the ability to deal with this. Well, here's the thing. The facts are in front of you. You just have to have the balls to do it. And the problem is that you have all these people who are successful content creators who are out there, who this is all they're doing. They have created a entire career off of this, and they're afraid. They're afraid if they go after them that nothing's going to happen. And here's the problem. As long as they continue to be paralyzed by their fear, they are going to continue to be force-fucked. They are going to continue to be screwed over, and they are going to continue to just get completely fucked over. And then what's going to happen is you're going to get the Alex Jones treatment. You're going to get deplatformed. You're going to get strikes against you, and nobody's going to say shit, and they're going to take you out one at a time. The only way to stop this sort of thing, the only two ways to stop it, number one, is to get out in front of it and to bring the fight to them. If it's a fight that they want, and it's a fight you're willing to have, and you have the balls to have, then Jesus Christ, drop the fucking skirt, take off the lipstick, put on some fucking fighting clothes, and go to war. Because they are coming for you. All these content creators out there, they are coming for you. And they are coming scorched earth. And they will not stop until you silence them or they silence you. People don't understand that that's what's going on. They don't give a shit about public opinion. They don't give a shit about how everybody thinks this. And here's the thing. They don't bring any value to the table other than what the content creators and their audiences bring to them. So these big content creators, they have a choice to make. Alex Jones can't do it by himself. InfoWars can't do it by themselves. There has to be a gut check. And these people need to ask themselves, what is their freedom of speech worth? How are you going to have a situation where your free speech rights are protected, where you are not being discriminated against by a communist socialist system? How the fuck are you going to be able to do it when you can't even stand up for yourself? How are you going to have people follow you? How are you going to keep your hundreds of thousands of followers or your millions of followers when you can't and you're unwilling to stand up for yourself? When the demonetization comes and they hit you in the pocketbook and you refuse to stand up for yourself, what kind of message does that send? You see, because again, they're going to continue pushing. And the only way to stop them is to force stop them. They have all the politicians in their pocket. So you're not going there. I mean, YouTube and Google, I should say, and Facebook, they're some of the largest spenders of lobbying dollars everywhere. So if you think that you're going to change the laws, think again. The MRAs tried it. They got their asses kicked. So you're not going to do it. You have one recourse right now in the United States. It's called the federal courts. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to go to war. And let me tell you something. When the United States was drug into World War II, we were drug into World War II. No one wanted to go. Nobody said, that's a great fucking idea. They did it because they had to. So either you learn how to fight and you take off the skirt and you put on a pair of pants, or you go down as a victim and everybody goes, meh, I guess I'll watch somebody else. Because I'll tell you, Google is actively censoring voices. They are defrauding you. They told you, come to our platform, make videos for us, and we'll pay you. We'll share the ad revenue. Then in order to defraud you from the ad revenue, they turned around and they said, we're going to reduce your traffic. We're going to make you less visible. We're going to put your videos in limited state. And then on top of all of that, we're going to lie to people around you and say that you're committing hate speech. That's defamation. These are all torts. This is well-settled case law. Don't let these people go, oh, well, we're tech companies. That doesn't apply. Fuck you and the horse you killed to get here. None of this shit has been tried in federal court. They all go to state court. They get their asses kicked, and then they're like, wah, wah. No, go to federal court, have a real goddamn fight. And if you have an attorney out there that's unwilling to go to federal court, that's not the right attorney. Just because they have a bar card doesn't mean they know what the fuck they're talking about. Most times they don't. So at the end of the day, if people are going to bring the fight, they need to get together and bring the fight. This can't be a cult of personality. And don't think that your guys' fucking gravy train where you can get a bunch of YouTube shekels to bitch about it and to cry about it and to whine about it and to go, oh my God, big tech is so horrible. Don't think that shit's going to last. Because you know what? You only get so much sympathy, and men don't give sympathy. It makes you look weak. And YouTube doesn't give a shit, because you know why? You're bringing value to them. It's not the other way around. They're fucking you out of your money. The question is, are you going to hold them accountable for it? Or are you just going to lay there and take it and be like, please use more lube? So that's what I got to say about that. Next question.
Excellent rant. Okay, this is the last one from Mr. Woofles00. Question for DDJ. How do you stop the cucks and simps from being the meat shield of gynocentrism?
One bullet at a time with 50-round magazines.
Yeah, boy.
Or you can use a higher caliber and get it through and through.
There you go. Actually, the way that you, here's the thing. I mean, let's take this serious. I mean, that was kind of a joke. Here's the thing. The way that you stop cucks and simps from being the meat shields for gynocentrism is you provide them the facts. You don't try to talk them into it. You don't try to debate them. You provide the facts, and then you disengage. MGTOW is the solution because it practices the martial art of don't be there. Oh, you're going to sexually harass me? I'm out. Pop, smoke, and ghost. Oh, you're going to try to divorce me? I'm out. Pop, smoke, and ghost. The best way to avoid divorce is to avoid marriage. The best way to avoid marriage is, number one, to not get married, and number two, to avoid cohabitation with a woman. You do those things, and look, now you're lowering the rape level. Now you're lowering domestic violence. Now you're lowering all these other things, and you're lowering the welfare that these bitches can get from you. And I'm not talking about bitches in the form of women. I'm talking about bitches in the form of feminists, because some bitches are men. So with that said, you provide them the facts, and then you let fucking nature take its course. Look at the majority of the victims of the hashtag Me Too movement. They're all male feminists. Fuck you and the horse you killed to get here, because the reality is they will eat their own. They have to have a victim. They have to attack somebody, and they need to constantly be attacked, or they need to constantly be attacking someone. As more and more men walk away from marriage, as more and more men walk away from gynocentrism, as more and more men walk away from bigoted women and walk away from working with them and walk away from all the rest of it, these feminist cunts don't know what to do. So what do? They turn around and they attack each other. They attack Weinstein, even though he had an agreement with some of these actresses to trade sex for parts. And these women actively and openly chose to prostitute themselves. And then all of a sudden it's sexual harassment. So you have to understand that they're turning on each other. So then as they turn on each other and as these men start getting demonized, all of a sudden they wake the fuck up. And they're like, shit. Holy shit, all these MRAs, all these MGTOW guys, all these red pill guys, they were telling me the truth about this shit. And I didn't listen to them. And then they're going to be like, damn, now I got my own fucking divorce rape story. I've got my own #MeToo story. And now you're a statistic. And that's really what wakes them up. That's really what wakes them up at the end of the day.
Some never learn even after that.
You know what? And they become, yeah, and those people become statistics. And we just step over their bodies as we move forward.
Right.
So with that said, that's the last question. Imbudo, gynocentrism pissed in my whiskey. So now you know. And by the way, I drink tequila, not whiskey. So there it is. But yeah, with that said, I wanted to thank everybody today. Rose and Lone Wolf, thank you for collecting the questions and getting them to me. Blue Shogun, thank you for being a guest on the stream. And everybody who watched the stream live, I really appreciate it. Feel free to support my channel through Patreon. Feel free if you have Twitch Prime, it costs you nothing. And you can support my channel by supporting me via Twitch Prime with a subscription. Again, it's free to you. It helps me out. Check out my website at misandrytoday.com. Check me out on gab.ai. Check me out on minds.com. I have formed the MGTOW group on Minds that anybody can talk and join and talk amongst yourselves. And again, if I'm targeted by YouTube, go ahead and check me out on bitchute.com. And of course, #ShillAlert. If that wasn't enough, check out my book that was an Amazon bestseller, The Feminist Lie. It was never about equality. You can not only get that on Amazon, you can get it on Barnes & Noble, and for the moment, you can get it on the Apple Store. It's not on Google Play because fuck them, that's why. So with that said, oh, and of course, check out my sponsor, The Dollhouse. You'll find a link from my website to them. I don't really talk about them a whole lot on this thing, on this particular stream, because Twitch has they have a new policy now against any kind of adult content that could be related to it. So thank you everybody for tuning in, and I hope you guys all have the great rest of your day. Take care.